I wasn't supposed to be home. That's what keeps ringing in my head, over and over again. If I hadn't forgotten my laptop, if I hadn't turned the car around halfway to work, if traffic hadn't been so weirdly light for once, I would have never seen it. Or her. Or him. But I did. And now I can't unsee it. My name's Emery. Yeah, not exactly a name you hear every day. Blame my mom. She loves Civil War history. I'm 41. Work in archival tech for a small museum in Maine. Quiet life. I'm the guy who scans 200-year-old documents and gets excited about faded ink. Boring to most, safe to some. I liked it that way, and I thought Willa did too. Willa and I have been together for 12 years, married for 8. She's 36. Graphic designer turned influencer. Yeah, that shift alone should have been a warning. She used to design wedding invites and small business logos. Then last year, she joined this fitness app community that snowballed into TikTok and brand collaborations. And suddenly, she was Willow_with_vibe with a growing follower count and a lot of new opinions. At first, I was proud. She found confidence. She was happier. I supported it. Even helped her set up lighting for her videos and learned how to make matcha lattes so she could film them in slow motion. But then it turned into something else, something performative. She was no longer just living life. She was curating it, editing reality. And somewhere in that curation, I stopped being a part of it. I noticed little things. She didn't ask me to take photos of her anymore, just used her tripod. She stopped tagging me in posts. She even changed her relationship status to private, claiming it's better for engagement. I didn't fight. I don't really know how to fight. I grew up avoiding conflict, the kind of kid who cried during group projects if someone raised their voice. Even now, I flinch when someone calls me by my full name. But I should have said something. I should have stopped pretending everything was fine, because it wasn't. Friday morning. Cold, windy. I left early for a donor event but realized I left my laptop on the dining room table. I pulled back into the driveway, walked inside quietly. That's when I heard it. Laughter. 2 voices. One was Willa's. The other I didn't recognize, male, confident, mocking. I paused in the hallway. Okay, one more take. This time, tell him he's boring before you walk out. More laughter. A phone being adjusted. Willa's voice. I swear this will blow up. I'm leaving my husband because he won't eat tofu. People love that kind of thing. My heart dropped. I leaned just enough to peek into the room. She was in full makeup, holding a suitcase, fake crying while this guy, young, tattooed, smug, coached her through it. They were filming some relationship challenge where she fake dumps her husband to get a reaction. Only it wasn't fake. Not to me. I'd been living it for months. I stepped back quietly, grabbed my laptop, closed the door behind me, and I didn't say a word. Not that day, not the next. But that Sunday, when she returned from a wellness retreat, expecting everything to be as she left it, she found the locks changed and her things waiting for her in a row of neatly stacked boxes by the door. When she called me in a panic, I answered. It was just a silly challenge, Emmy. For content, that's all. I said nothing. I simply walked out of the house, across the street, and watched from the neighbor's porch as she stood there, begging, whining, swearing it was all a joke. But the punchline had landed, and it wasn't funny. The thing about Willa is, she's always been a little too good at making things look like something they're not. It's not even lying in the traditional sense. It's more like she edits reality in her head before it ever comes out of her mouth. She turns discomfort into drama, silence into tension, and every ordinary moment into a scene. She used to do it for fun, make up stories about strangers in cafes, or invent personalities for our neighbors. But now she was doing it with our life, our marriage. That Sunday, after I locked her out, the panic started exactly 16 minutes after she found the boxes. She called, texted, called again. Then she switched tactics. Voice notes, each one more frantic than the last. Emmy, come on. Don't be dramatic. It was literally a challenge. People do this kind of stuff everywhere now. Why are you acting like I cheated on you? It was a joke. You're embarrassing me. You look crazy right now. That last one hit me in a weird way. I looked crazy. I sat on my friend Warren's couch as these voice notes rolled in. He kept glancing at me like I was about to explode, but I just sat there staring at my phone, feeling smaller and smaller with every message. I didn't even cry. I just felt erased, like I'd been reduced to a footnote in her content schedule. Her boring, tofu-hating husband that made for good TikTok comedy. And it didn't stop there. She posted the fake breakup video anyway. Even after seeing the locked door, even after realizing I wasn't playing along, she posted it. Under the title, "When you finally tell your husband the truth, winking face, broken heart, #marriage challenge, #headed no take it well." By Monday morning, it had over 40,000 views. By Monday night, it was 150,000. The comments were brutal. LOL, he looks like the type who cries during Pixar movies. Why does he look so confused? Did no one teach him about jokes? Girl, you deserve someone fun. He's giving mid-2000s MySpace energy. I didn't even know what half of those meant, but I felt them all. The worst part was she kept replying to comments, laughing, hearting them, pretending it was all cool and casual while texting me at the same time, begging to come inside and talk like adults. That night, I unplugged the router, deleted my social media, and sat down to write something I hadn't dared put into words for months. A list of all the ways I had ignored myself to keep our marriage alive. It started as a few bullet points, then pages, then a full breakdown of every time I swallowed a concern, brushed off a red flag, or let her reframe something hurtful as just part of her personality. I remembered the retreat she took 6 months ago to reset, how she came back glowing, posting pictures from mountaintops and ice baths. I hadn't thought to ask why there were no group shots, no mention of the yoga studio that organized it. Just her phone, and suspiciously intimate captions like, "When you find peace, you realize who you need and who you don't." I remembered her 3 a.m. laughs in the bathroom, saying she was editing videos, but always turning her screen away when I got close. I remembered her birthday dinner, where I sat through 3 courses while she live-streamed the whole thing with her ring turned upside down so no one got weird about it. And I remembered how I kept telling myself it wasn't that bad. That was the problem. I made peace with crumbs because I didn't want to seem too sensitive. I thought if I gave her space, she'd come back. If I didn't make a scene, she'd appreciate me more. But Willa doesn't respond to silence. She fills it with her own story. And if you don't speak, she'll write your part too. So I spoke. Tuesday morning, I posted something of my own. Not on TikTok, not with hashtags. Just a long Facebook post to family, friends, people who remembered us as a couple. I didn't bash her. I didn't expose her. I simply told the truth. She said it was a challenge. I didn't sign up to be humiliated for content. This isn't bitterness. It's clarity. I'm stepping away from someone who sees my life as a performance and my emotions as props. Please don't send me her videos. I'm not an audience anymore. I didn't expect the response, but the response was overwhelming. By Thursday, Willa had gone viral. Not TikTok viral, internet viral. Screenshots of our story, her version of it, were being shared on Instagram pages with names like @ModernMessiflove and @SpiceSplitUps. A few YouTubers even made reaction videos titled things like, "Wife leaves husband over tofu?" or "This guy got replaced by Clout." Some were mocking, some sympathetic. Most were just there to farm drama. And through it all, she kept posting like nothing was wrong. She doubled down. New videos showed her packing her suitcase again, but with sad music this time, tears that looked convenient. A caption that read, "When the one you love can't take a joke and locks you out of their life." Suddenly, the narrative shifted from her humiliating me to me being emotionally abusive. It was subtle, but you could see it in the comments. "I bet he never supported your content anyway. Some men are too fragile for strong women. You deserve better." He sounds controlling. And Willa liked them. All of them. But here's what she didn't know. That same week, I got a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly 2 years. Suddy, Willa's old college roommate. They were inseparable for years until one day, they just weren't. Willa always said Suddy moved to Oregon and became too woo-woo. Whatever that meant. Turns out, Suddy had not disappeared. She just stopped talking to Willa after a falling out. But she'd seen the viral clips, and something felt off. She messaged me on Facebook first. "Hey Emery, can we talk? I know this is random, but I think you should know some things." We set up a Zoom call. My hands were shaking before it even connected. Suddy didn't waste time. She's not just doing this for views. She's been planning an exit strategy for months. That challenge video wasn't a joke. It was a pivot. She's been networking with a brand manager out of LA, trying to position herself as a liberated wife influencer. I just blinked. They told her a dramatic breakup would help her brand. That single and healing sells better than married to a quiet guy who works in a museum. I know it sounds insane, but I overheard it on a call she had back in December. She talked about turning her breakup into a series. My chest went cold. It wasn't just a challenge. It was a business decision. Suddenly, so many things made sense. The selective stories, the faked arguments she posted, the Instagram captions about finding herself that I thought were harmless. Suddy didn't have screenshots, but she gave me names. 2 social media managers and a talent coach Willa had connected with. One of them even had a post on their page celebrating a client's big leap into independence, with a silhouetted photo that looked suspiciously like Willa. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream, so I did neither. Instead, I called my lawyer. No, not to file for divorce, not yet, but to protect myself. Because at that point, Willa wasn't just playing with my emotions. She was manipulating the public and potentially profiting from it. By the time the weekend rolled around, I'd had enough. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to ruin her. I just wanted people to know the truth. So I wrote a letter, not for Facebook, not for views, for her. I printed it, sealed it, and left it inside one of the boxes she still hadn't picked up. And I taped a note on the outside. "You wanted a story. Here's mine." In the letter, I wrote everything. My confusion, my humiliation, the calls, the evidence. The moment she rewrote my silence as weakness and my kindness as boredom. I didn't accuse. I described. I didn't insult. I reflected. And then I ended with this. "You once said I was the safest place you'd ever known. But now you've turned that into content. You can have your audience, your sponsors, your curated heartbreak, but you don't get to keep me as your silent co-star. That show is canceled." The letter sat untouched for 3 days. I kept watching from Warren's front window, half expecting her to knock, scream, cry, something. But she didn't. She came quietly one morning, just after 9 a.m., wearing oversized sunglasses and a hoodie like she was trying to avoid being recognized in her own neighborhood. She didn't even glance at the house, just scooped up the boxes like she was collecting laundry. When she picked up the one with the letter, she paused just for a second. And I hoped maybe it would land, that maybe this version of her, the real Willa, would finally read something without a ring light on her face or a camera tracking her every blink. But within hours, I got my answer. Not from a message, not from a call, from a video. She posted a 3-minute response on her page, filmed in a soft-lit room with lo-fi music humming under her voice. The title, "To everyone who's been asking, here's the truth. Broken heart. I knew I shouldn't have watched, but I did." She started crying before she said a word. Then she launched into a monologue about mental health, misunderstood intentions, and how people can weaponize silence against you just as much as words. She never mentioned my name, never owned up to anything specific, just vague gestures toward hurt, toxicity, and growth. And then, right near the end, she said this: "Sometimes you try to share your real self with someone, and they slam the door shut. But I'm not bitter. I'm grateful for the lessons, and I'm moving forward with grace." That was the moment I felt my hands clench into fists. She had taken the most humiliating, raw, personal unraveling of my life and turned it into her healing arc. She made me the shadowy villain in her story without ever saying my name. Just like that, she got to cry and rise from the ashes. Ashes she lit herself, and her followers ate it up. Comments flooded in. "This is why I followed you for years. You're so real. He didn't deserve your energy. Keep shining, queen. You're growing and glowing." That night I couldn't sleep. I went for a walk around the block at 2 a.m. The air was still, but my mind was screaming. Every version of the story online was spinning further and further from the truth, and I kept wondering, was there a version of this where I deserved it? Was I boring? Was I the safe guy who just didn't get it? I ended up outside the museum where I worked. I sat on the steps until sunrise, trying to ground myself in something that didn't feel like a performance. The stone beneath me, the wind, my own breath. Then my phone buzzed. A message from someone unexpected. Molly Hawthorne. She was Willa's old client from when she used to do custom branding. A quiet florist who ran a shop in the next town over. We met maybe twice years ago. Her message said, "Hey Emery, I know we barely know each other, but I saw the stuff online. And I saw the original footage before it was edited. Thought you should too." Attached was a file. Clip, raw, uncut. It was the breakup challenge video, but not the version Willa posted. It was longer. It showed Willa rehearsing lines, laughing with her phone guy, Colt, apparently his name was, and asking him to amp up the reaction, make it more believable. Then, before filming, she said, "Honestly, if this doesn't blow up, I'll just tell him it was a prank or gaslight him into thinking he agreed to it." My throat tightened. There it was. Not just manipulation, not just opportunism, but cold calculation. She had rehearsed breaking my heart like it was a scene in a web series. That video changed everything. Not just because of what it proved, but because it came from someone outside our bubble. Someone who saw through the curtain and still chose to reach out. I sent it to my lawyer. I didn't want to weaponize it. I didn't want revenge. But I wanted protection. I wanted truth. I wanted something solid to lean on if the narrative turned uglier, because I had a feeling it would. And I was right, because the next thing I found out was that Willa had already pitched our story to a podcast. A friend sent it to me first. It was called Unfiltered Femmes, a mid-sized relationship podcast that Willa had apparently been following for years. Two hosts, both in their 30s, known for their brash takes and hot topic interviews. They usually talked about messy breakups, polyamory horror stories, or healing from men who dim your light. It was popular with her audience. I had no idea she'd been invited on. The episode title, "I Left My Husband on Camera and Found Myself." My stomach dropped when I saw the thumbnail. It was Willa sitting in front of a pink microphone, hands folded, wearing the blank look she always used when she was about to say something deeply manipulative in a very soft voice. I didn't want to listen. I really didn't, but of course I did. She started by thanking the hosts for having her and said she was in a transitional chapter. Said she'd been married to a quiet, kind man who just didn't see her anymore. She never said my name, but she described everything in vague enough terms to protect herself legally and specific enough to make sure her followers knew who the villain was. Willa told them I didn't support her dreams. She said I withdrew emotionally months before she ever filmed the challenge. She said that the now viral video was just a creative expression that got misunderstood. But the worst part, she said she had to leave the marriage loudly because staying silent was killing her. And the hosts ate it up. One of them said, "I love that you chose yourself. So many women just waste their youth trying to be someone's stability blanket." The other added, "You turned your pain into power, girl." Pain. She turned my dignity into clicks. And here's the thing. I wanted to believe I could just ignore it all, that I could just stay silent, let it blow over, and she'd move on to some skincare partnership or another fake cleanse. But then something else happened. I got doxxed. A day after the podcast aired, my work email got flooded. Anonymous messages, TikTok screenshots, fake reviews on our museum's page calling me a controlling husband, and a misogynist loser who couldn't handle a successful wife. Someone even left a voicemail at our front desk accusing me of emotionally manipulating a beautiful, strong woman. My boss pulled me into his office and asked if I was okay. He didn't look angry, just tired. And I broke down right there, in a room lined with 19th century war artifacts. I cried like a kid because it was never supposed to go this far. I had stayed silent. I had backed away. I hadn't exposed her, insulted her, or tried to twist the narrative. And still, I was the villain. The next day, Molly texted me again. She had another clip. Apparently, Willa had sent preview footage to a PR firm that Molly used to freelance for. In this one, Willa is standing in front of our bookshelf, my bookshelf, talking about how she used to read to me at night and how I'd fall asleep mid-page because of even love boredom. That hurt more than anything because I remembered that moment. It wasn't boredom. It was safety. I fell asleep to the sound of her voice because for a time, that voice was home. And now she was rewriting it as proof I never loved her. I didn't know what to do next. I felt powerless. Every time I stayed quiet, she filled the silence with her fantasy. But speaking out felt like stepping into a war I wasn't trained for. I wasn't a social media person. I didn't know how to clap back or reclaim the narrative. I was just a man trying to grieve a relationship that had been turned into content without his consent. Warren sat me down that night and said, "Man, either you say something or she gets to write the ending." So, I did something I hadn't planned on. I wrote my story, but not in a Facebook post this time. Not in a bitter thread or a takedown video. I sent it anonymously to the same podcast. At first, I didn't think they'd respond, but they did. And they wanted to talk. I didn't expect them to respond. When I submitted my anonymous message to Unfiltered Femmes, I used no names, no accusations, just facts. I explained what actually happened the morning of the so-called breakup challenge. I described the weeks leading up to it, the silent withdrawal, the way she slowly replaced conversations with content, how I watched our home become her studio and our marriage become her storyline. I made sure to clarify that I wasn't bitter. I wasn't trying to cancel anyone. I just wanted to correct the record. Not for clout, not for attention, but for the truth. 3 days later, I got a reply. The producer said the hosts were interested in doing a follow-up episode and wanted to read my message aloud. They promised anonymity, respect, balance. They said they were committed to truth from both sides. I didn't believe them, but I agreed. And when the episode dropped the following Monday, I sat in my car before work, parked 2 blocks from the museum, and listened with sweaty palms and a pit in my chest. They opened with a disclaimer. "We've received a lot of responses after our last episode," the host said, her voice softer than usual. And one in particular stood out, not because it was angry or reactive, but because it offered a very different perspective. Then they read it, my story, word for word. And suddenly, there I was, no name, no face, just raw truth echoing through earbuds and Bluetooth speakers across the country. They didn't interrupt. They didn't mock. For the first time, they listened. Afterward, one of the hosts went quiet for a beat before saying, "Okay. Well, I didn't expect that." The other added, "Yeah, if that's all true, and we're not saying anyone lied, just if, then maybe we need to rethink the way we're framing some of these stories." It wasn't much, but it was more than I'd had in weeks. And that's when the messages started. First, quietly, a few DMs from strangers saying, "Hey, I saw your side of the story. I'm sorry that happened to you." Then a couple of comments on older posts I'd forgotten to archive. "You didn't deserve that." She was never telling the full truth. But the real shift came 48 hours later when the unedited video leaked. I didn't leak it. Couldn't have. It was still buried in a Dropbox folder Molly had shared only with me and my lawyer. But someone, maybe someone from Willa's old PR circle, sent it anonymously to a mid-tier YouTuber known for exposing influencer scams. He uploaded a side-by-side, Willa's polished breakup video next to the raw footage. The rehearsed lines, the laughter between takes, her comment about gaslighting me if it didn't land right. And this time, people noticed. Hard. Comments turned. The tide shifted. Wait, she planned this? This wasn't a challenge. This was a setup. You don't gaslight someone as a joke. How is this woman still monetized? Her follower count stalled, then dipped. A few minor brands quietly removed her from upcoming campaigns. Nothing dramatic, no major cancellation, but enough to sting. She posted once after that, a vague note in her story. "People will believe whatever makes them feel righteous. I'm done explaining." That was it. No apology, no explanation, just retreat. And you'd think I'd feel some satisfaction in that, but I didn't. Not even a little. Because all of it, the silence, the gaslighting, the humiliation, it had already carved something deep into me. Something I wasn't sure I could name yet. All I knew was that I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. The next few days were oddly quiet. No more emails, no new messages. It was as if the noise had finally settled, and I was left standing in the wreckage of what used to be a life. And that's when I saw her again in person. No cameras, no filters, just Willa in the parking lot of the grocery store. She didn't see me at first. She was getting into her car. No makeup, hair pulled up, wearing the hoodie she used to sleep in when she was sick. For a second, I almost didn't recognize her. Then she looked up and we locked eyes. We didn't speak. She didn't wave. But her face said everything. Not regret, not even anger. Shame. Not because she got caught, but because for the first time I wasn't shrinking beneath her. And maybe that was the most powerful thing I'd done in years. After that moment in the parking lot, I genuinely believed it was done. Not just the scandal, not just the internet drama, but all of it. The toxicity, the spinning narratives, the emotional gut punches. I thought the worst of it had washed away like a storm that finally spent itself. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel healed. But for the first time in months, I felt still. I started sleeping again. Not well, but better. My appetite returned. I began going for walks around the neighborhood without that pit in my stomach, wondering if I'd see her phone aimed in my direction, or if some stranger would recognize me from a meme. Even the museum seemed different, warmer, more peaceful. I stayed late one evening just to finish reorganizing the old map section, something I hadn't done in years. That night, as I locked up, I looked around the quiet marble lobby and realized I didn't feel like I was hiding anymore. But peace never comes clean. It was a Sunday afternoon, 2 weeks after the podcast episode aired, when the knock came. 3 sharp raps at my front door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I assumed it was a delivery, but when I opened it, I froze. It was a man, late 40s, maybe 50, clean-cut, heavy-set, with sharp gray eyes that didn't blink much. He wore a brown jacket with elbow patches and held a black leather folder under his arm. "Emery Kavanaugh?" he asked. I nodded cautiously. "I'm Aaron Weiss," he said. "I used to be Willa's professor at Hastings College, creative media program." That caught me off guard. "Okay," I said, unsure why he was here or what he wanted. He didn't waste time. "I've been watching what's unfolded online, and I think you should know something before she finds a way to spin it." He handed me the folder. Inside were printed emails, screenshots, a list of names, course assignments, and a confidential report from the university's Title IX office. Willa had fabricated a harassment claim in college, not against Aaron, but against a fellow student, a young woman named Brenna, who had been selected over Willa to lead their final media capstone. According to the documents, Willa claimed Brenna had sabotaged her work and spread lies about her online. The university opened an investigation and found nothing. In fact, it turned out Willa had secretly deleted Brenna's footage from their shared drive. It nearly derailed the girls' graduation. But when it all came to light, Willa was issued a private warning and placed on academic probation, though no formal disciplinary action was taken. I looked at Aaron, speechless. "I didn't come here to rehash ancient history," he said. "But when I saw your name and the way she's been telling your story, I couldn't stay silent. She has a pattern, Mr. Kavanaugh. She weaponizes perception. Back then, she was doing it on student film forums. Now she does it on social media. But it's the same script." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I'm not asking you to do anything. I just thought maybe if you knew she's done this before, it might help you stop blaming yourself." I stood there clutching the folder, heart pounding. All I could think was, how much of my life was real? How much of what she gave me, told me, showed me was just another version of her story for an invisible audience? Aaron left without asking for anything in return, just gave a polite nod and disappeared down the steps. I stayed frozen in the doorway for a long time after he was gone. That night, I didn't sleep. I reread every email, every line, and then I sat down at my desk, opened a blank document, and started typing again. Not for the internet, not for a podcast, not for anyone else. For me. I wrote down everything from the first time I met her to the moment I watched her fake our breakup on camera. I chronicled the red flags, the manipulation, the emotional numbness she left behind. I included quotes, messages, timestamps, even the names Aaron gave me. I didn't know why I was doing it. Maybe it was therapy. Maybe it was the only form of closure I'd ever get. But by the time I reached the last page, I felt something shift. Not relief, not forgiveness, just distance. Like I was finally seeing her from the outside for the first time. And what I saw wasn't some chaotic influencer who lost herself online. It was someone who never knew who she was to begin with and tried to build a personality out of burning bridges. The next morning, I received an email. Subject line, "I need to talk. Please." It was from her. Not public, not posted, just Willa reaching out one-on-one. The message was short. "I know I don't deserve it, but I need 5 minutes of your time. In person. One last conversation. I promise this isn't for content. I just need to say something I never said before." And that's where I was left. Staring at the blinking cursor on my reply screen, wondering if the woman who built an empire out of my silence was finally ready to hear my voice, or just looking for a new ending to her story. I didn't reply right away. Her message sat unopened for a full day while I paced my apartment, played the scenarios out in my mind, and tried to figure out what she could possibly want from me now. Closure? Forgiveness? One last bit of control over a story that had already spun too far? But something about her words, how quiet they were, how stripped of performance, stayed with me. It wasn't the same Willa who curated every sentence like it was a headline. It felt smaller, realer, and maybe, just maybe, it was the only thread left that I hadn't cut yet. So I said yes. We met in a small coffee shop 2 towns over, neutral ground where no one would know either of us. She wore no makeup, no cameras. Just Willa, or whatever version of her was left underneath everything she tried to become online. She sat first. I followed. For the first time in months, she didn't lead with excuses. "I hurt you," she said, looking me straight in the eye. "I know that. And not just with the videos. I started turning our marriage into a character long before I ever hit record. I didn't know how to be happy in something steady. I thought excitement meant chaos. I thought if I didn't keep chasing a storyline, I'd disappear." I didn't speak. I let her continue. "I used you, Emery. Your patience, your quiet, your love. I saw you as a backdrop because I didn't know how to love someone who wasn't trying to impress the world." She paused. "And now, I don't know who I am without all of that." I finally spoke. "You'll figure it out. But you won't do it with me. And you won't do it using my name." She nodded slowly. "I won't ask you to forgive me. I just wanted to say it out loud. Without followers, without edits. That was it. No begging, no drama, no cameras. We both stood. She thanked me. And this time, when she walked out of my life, it wasn't with a fake suitcase and a TikTok challenge. It was just quiet. And that was enough. In the weeks that followed, I reclaimed the silence she'd filled for so long. I deleted the last folders, replaced the curtains she picked out, took a weekend trip with Warren and his partner to Vermont, where we hiked without phones and laughed around a fire without once bringing up followers or likes. One evening, back at the museum, I was reorganizing a section of personal letters from the early 1900s. I found one written by a soldier to his wife. The ink had faded, but the words still pulsed with sincerity. "It's not the noise I miss. It's the way your silence always made me feel safe." I smiled because I finally understood. I'd spent years being the quiet man in someone else's performance, thinking my value was in being background. But now, I was writing my own life. Not for applause, not for an audience, but for peace. I even met someone new eventually. Her name's Delia. She runs a used bookshop down the street. We're taking it slow. She doesn't care about social media. She says the only thing she wants to go viral is her sourdough starter. And I love that. I never got revenge. I never got justice in the way some people might have expected. But I got something better. I got free.